Very pleased to welcome for the next hour Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. Welcome aboard.
We've got an absolute migrant extravaganza tonight, haven't we?
You can put it that way. I don't think we should be...
I'm trying to be positive here. You know, what we're doing is shedding light on one of the, well, probably the single biggest issue facing our country, actually. Everything stems from this issue, everything.
Yeah, and I quoted you today on one of the TV shows we make, and you were right, saying that neither the Tory government never understood this. The successive Tory prime ministers, you know, right back from Cameron to May, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, and now Keir Starmer, none of them understood that this will lose them the election. Yeah. This is what lost the Tories the election last time round, and it will. Starmer isn't aware of this, but it will lose him the next election.
And the reason that he doesn't understand that is because he spends too much time being in an exclusive environment where, you know, you're treated like a VIP and you get to meet Taylor Swift and you're getting designer clothes and all of that. If he actually just spent a time being an ordinary politician, you know, knocking on doors, going round the streets of places like the toughest areas in Wales, for example. And even, by the way, here's an extraordinary thing. You know, Scotland has not been an area... Scotland needs, actually, or feels it needs lots of extra people. But nonetheless, there is still frustration there at the type of people that are coming into this country. Yeah. And this is what I think that our... the higher they get, the more detached our leaders become from how it is to be an ordinary person living in in a particularly disadvantaged area. The extent to which the illegal immigration catastrophe is spoiling people's lives.
Yeah, you're so right, you're so right. I mean, we mustn't digress too much, but, you know, I was quite, I wouldn't say close, but I was a friend of Alex Salmond. I'm very upset that he died. I never agreed with very much he ever said.
He was great company, wasn't he? But passionate.
He was that rare politician. He was a human being. He understood other people. He'd stop on the street and chat to them. If only we had a prime minister like this. What we've got is a weird robot who has no idea about the rest of the human race.
He really is weird, isn't he? So I was watching Prime Minister's Questions today, and if people are really interested in politics, just spend 10 minutes looking at the first 10 minutes of Prime Minister's Questions and watch the way he reacts when Rishi Sunak, who's still, I'd almost forgotten, he's still leader of the Tory party, asks Keir Starmer about something in such a measured and reasonable way. He's talking about foreign influence and what needs to be done to protect this country from the malign influence of Russia, of China. And Keir Starmer just goes, "That's not correct," like that, and then just went silent. And you should see his eyes; they were like really weird.
Yeah,
so something's not right there.
Yeah, like when he was challenged about two-tier policing. To this day, his only response to the charge of two-tier policing
is that there isn't any.
This is exactly what he said. That's not an issue. Keir, it is an issue.
It really is.
And you better get with the programme, otherwise that'll be another thing that brings you down. Still no movement on the Manchester Airport cop beating.
So thank you for reminding me of that, because I think now the clock must be ticking on when Reform's going to start their fundraiser to bring a private prosecution, because they were going to give it. I know they were going to give the Home Office or the CPS just a little bit of grace, you know, to see if maybe this would actually prompt to do anything.
If the nudge would work.
But no, the nudge, that obviously hasn't worked because that's not an issue.
That's not an issue. Oh, God. I mean, it really is frightening, this guy we've got in charge. But here's a Talk exclusive that I trailed just now. 120,000 foreign crooks, people from abroad, were caught committing an astonishing 127,000 crimes in Britain last year. Now, the thing about this, I mean, these lawbreakers from abroad were responsible for a huge number of violent assaults, nearly 50,000, loads of drug dealing, loads of thieving, loads of shoplifting, and this is as a result of freedom of information requests to 37 police forces across England and Wales. So these are pretty comprehensive figures. Now, what is very worrying about this, I mean, the sheer scale of 120,000 serious crimes in a year committed by people who aren't British, who are from abroad, that's frightening enough. But when you take on board, Isabel, that only 5% or so of all crimes are ever solved. Only 5% result in an arrest and a conviction. So what we're talking about with this 120,000 crimes, that's the tip of the iceberg. You know, I said earlier that we're talking easily north of 500,000 crimes by our foreign friends, our foreign visitors, but probably even more than that.
Yeah, so on the list of the 37, I haven't actually seen the list of the 37 forces that responded. Do you know if the Met's included in that? Because I have seen the Met figures and they are massive in their own right. You know, the numbers here are off the dial. I was just talking to Jeremy about it at the end of his show, and what's really important to just to flag up here is that the police are incredibly reluctant to tell us what proportion this is of all crimes committed. Now, why do you think that might be?
Oh, I don't know. Two-tier policing.
I'm going to go down the route of I don't think they want us to know that foreign citizens commit a disproportionate number of offences in this country, and I think we'd find that in some areas it is off the chart.
Do you know what? I had Rod Liddle on the show last night and read Rod's Spectator column before he comes on in future. I'd read him in the Times and the Sun, and I get the Spectator, but I hadn't read it. But I read it this morning, and he pointed out something brilliant, characteristically, of course. Well, it's not brilliant, it's really disconcerting. It's this. Now, we were discussing last week, weren't we, the absurdity of this Albanian guy who went to jail twice, was deported twice, twice broke back into the country, then managed to marry his Lithuanian girlfriend and have a baby, and judges ruled that despite his nefarious background, his entitlement to a family life superseded everything else, and he was allowed to stay. He was given permanent asylum in this country. The judges said, well, this is the ECR, this is the interpretation. Now, the interpretation of this law or these rules. Well, Rob went into it, and it specifically says in the European Convention on Human Rights that the right to a family life is preeminent, except in the cases of lawbreakers. If you break the law in your host country, then you don't have a right to a family life, and yet our judges are interpreting it that you do. In other words, they're not actually adhering to the law, they're just basically saying we're left-leaning judges, and basically if you're a migrant, what we're going to do is give you exactly what you want.
I mean, didn't you used to think that judges and lawyers would be on the side of the law, you know, on the side of actually what the law says, and even further than that, they would actually want to enforce the law, that this was, you know, this is their fundamental core offer, you know, that they're actually part of upholding law and order in this country and helping create a society in which people feel safe. It's come as a shock to me over recent years to realise just how left and liberal and wet they are. What's that all about?
It's extraordinary.
And it isn't the case in many other countries, by the way. I mean, it may be in wet liberal parts of Western Europe, but in other countries, judges and lawyers are actually kind of, they recognise that their role is to not be like that.
I mean, in Germany, I mean, a lot of these countries that were traditionally very sort of liberal and left-leaning, especially Germany, but also France. I mean, their populations are finally waking up.
Oh, they're rising up,
They're waking up, and they're just saying no to this left-leaning nonsense, this liberal nonsense. You know, in Germany, for example, the people are sort of saying, you know, this asylum seeker, you know, who walked into a crowded square while they were celebrating diversity and stabbed 11 of our citizens in the neck, killing 3 of them. You know, we sort of don't really want any more people like that in the country. And any party that is going to be friendly to migrants in that respect, to say, come one, come all, like they do in Britain, we're not going to vote for them. And even the left-leaning parties in Germany especially are starting to realise we better do what the people say here.
I'm afraid I just can't see Labour understanding that.
Well, it will be their downfall. It'll be their downfall. As I say, you know, the problem with, we're going to talk more about the migrant crisis, don't worry, folks, but the problem with the likes of Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper they recently, or Starmer recently, went to Italy and saw Giorgia Meloni, who's been very successful turning her migrant crisis around. 62% down, I think, their migrant influx is. He said, "I'm very interested in this, very interested." No, he's not. No, he's not. I think I've said this to you before. This is the difference between Giorgia Meloni, Italy's leader, and Keir Starmer, Britain's leader. Giorgia Meloni wants to solve her migrant crisis. Keir Starmer does not want to solve Britain's migrant crisis. He doesn't want to.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for? And, we should get some veterans on this show, because I really think some of them feel in their heart complete despair at the things that they've fought for. They've put their lives on the line for their country. They have watched comrades die on the front line for this country, and yet they see criminals coming in and insulting us and taking everything that we have worked to build here, and they see them doing it with impunity. And that is one cohort of important voter in this country that feels utterly let down by the government, successive governments.
And as we discussed last night, there's this guy, we hope he's not in the country yet, who's making his way from Sweden, who says he wants to kill Nigel Farage.
Oh, he was backtracking last night. Did you see that?
Oh, did he? Good.
Oh, he starts backtracking. So he's clearly panicking because everybody's now talking about him, and he realises, oops, I've got a gun tattoo on my forehead.
I'm kind of recognisable, Kalashnikov on his cheek.
So he starts backtracking and claiming that he only said the things he did because, someone basically, had a knife to him at the time, and he was forced to say these things. And actually, he wants to have a meeting with Nigel Farage. Although it won't be happening, my friend.
I don't think Nigel will be clearing his diary.
No, I don't think that'll be happening. So clearly he's panicking. I don't know if he is or he isn't in the country. It was claimed last night he was, but
my point is that guy. Let's hope he doesn't make it. But if he wants to get in, he'll get in, no trouble at all. We saw this guy, this Romanian migrant, kicked out of the country, did 32 months in jail for threatening a lady to split her face so she looked like the Joker in the Batman films, and so he gets 32 months, obviously a really bad, nasty piece of work. He's kicked out of the country, deported at the end of his sentence, back in Scotland 17 days later. So we characterise the migrant crisis as all these thousands of people waiting on the northern coast to get onto their small boat or their dinghy, and many of them, that is the way they cross. But let me tell you, basically anyone can get into this country at will. Our borders are not sovereign, they're sieves. It's as simple as that.
And we forget that people are still coming over in the back of lorries. I mean, it's a lot better than it was, but actually remember, not so long ago, doing some reporting up in Derby and talking to a bunch of migrants that were loitering around the town centre, because that is how it looks in many of our town centres now, and they were all doing, the fast food deliveries. I won't name and shame companies, we can all guess who they were. And I got chatting to these people. Some of these people, I didn't really tell them too much about what my agenda was, and some of them just said, I came here on the back of a lorry.
Back of a lorry. It's unbelievable. Did I tell you that story when I was, it must be 20 years ago, maybe 15 or so. It was when I was slightly younger, and I must have been 20 because it was a stag do, so I'm a little bit past the stag do phase of life. I'm at the phase now where all my friends are dying, actually, but seriously.
Don't mean to laugh, but I'm sure you're not that old, Kev.
Anyway, it was a stag do, and we went to Boulogne, and as you do, had a few drinks, and I lost my passport.
Oh gosh!
I want to get back in the country. Oh my God! So they thought. So I talked to some official on the boat. He said, "Well, you'll have to talk to the immigration people. You have to fill a form in, and probably take a." I said, "Oh sod that, I don't want to do that. Anyway, so the ferry comes across. I just sort of looked around and thought, right, if I go over that fence and go... I climbed about 3 fences.
Did you?
And when my friends came off the ferry, I was waiting for them on the dockside.
Oh, my.
That's how easy it is to get in this country.
Wow.
So
I think you should reprise that. This would be a great Talk exclusive. Watch Kev be an illegal migrant.
Yeah. It's
we put it to the test.
Yeah, it'd be the latest chapter in my career of irresponsible journalism.